Economic growth outlook as the annual industrial output growth accelerated to a 2-month high of 4.1% in April, even as consumer price inflation edged to 5.01% in May. The output data comes just days after government GDP data showed India outpaced China by growing 7.5% in the March quarter, which is in line with the government's view that India's economic growth is gathering steam. The World Bank predicted on Thursday that India would be the fastest growing major economy this year, expanding at a rate of 7.5%, up from the previous forecast of 6.4%. However, the prospect of a deficient monsoon resulting in a second straight year of drought for the first time in nearly 3 decades is a worrisome scenario for policy makers, as a dry spell could reduce headline growth. So what is the road ahead? We discuss today in Public Forum. And to discuss the same, we have with us in the studios an eminent panel. Please welcome Dr. Amirullah Khan. He's a well-known economist, president of Brookell University. We are also joined by Dr. Aman Agarwal, vice chairman of Indian Institute of Finance. He's also a well-known economist. I welcome you both to Public Forum. We are also joined by Dr. Ranjit Mehra, director of the PhD Chambers of Commerce and Industry. Welcome to the program, Dr. Mehta. And later in the program, Ashok Dasgupta, senior business journalist, will join us. Dr. Khan, let me begin with you. How do you view these numbers, industrial output at a 2-month high of 4.1% in April?
Certainly much better than expected. So everybody is pretty happy, and understandably so. However, one must realize that this is a very minor drop in the ocean as far as recovery is concerned. And every other aspect that we look at is troublesome. So if we are going to celebrate this heavily, then we are in trouble. We have problems on the job creation front. We clearly have problems on the monsoon. The Reserve Bank has already warned us about growth being constrained. But I think the major issue that we ought to be looking at is whether we are ready and prepared for the next 6 months or so, where we are going to see some return of very high inflation, particularly food inflation. And it is there that I don't think we are yet ready. The second issue, and that is of industrial growth. While the number last month looks good, what is also a matter of concern is that credit offtake is very, very low right now. So while we might be in a situation where we are doing better than China, we must remember that it is because China is not doing well, not because we are doing very well.
Okay.
All right. So that's what I wanted to underline right in the beginning, that if we are going to look at sustained growth rate, a return to growth of 9 to 10%, then we need to be clear about on what we are calculating these measures.
Okay.
The one point that I also wanted to highlight right away is that remember that these growth figures that we are talking about are a new series of growth. So when we talk about higher growth, then it is not necessarily higher compared to what it was in the earlier series. This is also a new way of calculating our growth, so it might be a little higher than it actually is. The issue that we need to focus on very clearly is that economic growth in today's times is not enough. It is job growth that we should be looking at, and on that front we seem to be way behind our targets.
Okay. Before I come to you, Dr. Agarwal, let me go across to Dr. Ranjit Mehta, director of the PhD Chambers of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Mehta, industrial output at a 2-month high of 4.1% in April, mainly driven by the manufacturing sector. How do you look at this?
Yeah, this growth has in fact surprised most of the industry persons. You know, if you see that IIP, in IIP, and 75% is contributed by the manufacturing sector. And also if you see in 2015, I mean, we have seen a negative growth in the IIP only once. If you compare it with the 2014, which was around 6 times. And a very important thing I would like to tell you here is that, like if you see the out of 22 industrial groups which are counted in the manufacturing sector, 16 groups are showing the positive growth. I think this is a very good sign for the industry.
But Dr. Mehta, there are many who would say that there's not much to cheer yet. Amirullah Khan, present here with us in our studios, is one. Production of capital goods, of course, has not picked up. In fact, it grew at a slower pace of 11.1% in April, as against 13.1% the same year, the same month last year. What would you say to this?
You see, one thing we have to understand that green shoots in the economy are visible right now, and of course what is worrisome is, and if you have a bad monsoon in the times to come, that will be a thing of worry. Otherwise, the things have started moving in the industry. The economy is poised for the growth, and already, I mean, there's a prediction that we are going to have a growth rate of around 7.5% in the economy, which is a good sign, and we have to be positive seeing these numbers. And I'm sure in the times to come, with the kind of investment that is coming and with the growth in the infrastructure sector, the things will be better.
All right, so you are saying the economy is on the road to recovery, fast growth is going to take place. You are positive of that. Dr. Agarwal, how do you view these numbers? 4.1% industrial output, the proverbial green shoots, as they say, they are emerging?
You see, it is a positive sign, first of all. Secondly, the kind of positive confidence in the international market for the Indian industry and the Indian markets gets reflected by some of these figures. As there is a need of caution which is there, a very important component which my colleagues did not mention is the exchange rate, which has fallen tremendously, and it is going to be a big cost because more than the food, which will actually have an impact in about 2 months' time because of the monsoon coming in and the low production of food grains, that will have an impact on the inflation figures coming in real terms in about 2 months' time, not now. But this rupee depreciation would have an impact immediately, both through the oil prices as well as through the food, because some component of our food is also still imported from the international market. And given those factors, this would discount the growth component which you're talking about. As Dr. Khan also said, that you see, it is not that China is growing better or India is growing better. Both these countries, certainly in terms of size, are quite similar, but in terms of geographical locations, the requirements, the needs are quite different. And the reason we are going much beyond China per se in terms of the growth figures is primarily because of the low growth China is observing today, and not because of India growing much faster as compared to China per se. So this India-China comparison was more from a perspective of European or the Western perspective, where they looked at India and China from investment avenues, and then they tried to compare India and China's growth because they wanted return on their investment to come. So for them to see return on investment, they would see what are the inflation figures, what is the fiscal deficit, what is the money supply, what is the growth rate. These are key components which they would look at. And that is why they would compare India and China, because they did not find other avenues around the world to invest in and to be fairly safe and comfortable to take out this money. Now from that perspective, India and China used to be compared. India per se never tried to compare India and China. I think we have our own requirements, not to forget that about 70 to 75% of the population is still based on agriculture, whether it is agriculture pure as a domain or an agro-based industry structure. Both of them are still based, and they would be heavily hit by the kind of monsoons which have been there. Also to see that the industry, the primary input factor is the agriculture for large and moderate industry. Again, that would also get hit. So these numbers which may have gone up now may actually go down to some level in the next quarter because of the monsoon factor. And this would actually result in the things going down. One more component which is to be also understood is that India fortunately has a very strong parallel economy. And because of the parallel economy, there is a small component of growth to the tune which normally say the parallel economy is as strong as a normal economy in economics, which means that if you're looking at a 7% growth rate or 8% growth rate, the effective growth rate actually in real terms is about 10 to 11%, which most of the world or the international agencies don't look at, but Indians or Indian manufacturers or Indian businessmen normally take that into account because the unaccounted goods and services produced by them on which they do not pay taxes and the black money they generate to become a shield for themselves in against any kind of recession which comes in. And that is also income, because this is not income from illegal activities. This is income from legal activities. Parallel economies around the world in various countries primarily get generated from illegal activities. Mafias, drugs, ammunition sold. But in India, 95% of this, I would say 90 to 95% of the black money component is actually from legal incomes, but where they have not paid taxes.
Right.
So, this also comes into the growth component in terms of servicing the growth in the economy, and this is also an important component to be looked upon. I'm happy that the World Bank is recognizing India, and I think this will further boost the international confidence to invest in India. So we may see some part may get overcome by this international confidence and the international investment which may come in, and let's see what will happen tomorrow, but it is a good news which has come forth, I feel.
Okay, Dr. Khan, you wanted to comment?
My worry is just this, that this is an important point. The foreign investor is looking at these figures and so on. But then the worry is that why is the foreign investor not interested? FDI has not picked up at all, and FIIs have been selling. The manner in which the stock market has performed over especially the last week, is worrisome. And when FIIs pull their money out, they are actually voting on their feet. They are actually looking at all these, and they're not clearly happy with what is going on in India. And I think a lot of it has to do with this very ill-advised move on this MAT on FIIs. It just seems to have killed all that enthusiasm that could have come with these kind of upsurges. So the point that I'm making is that if we are going to be serious about growth, if we want manufacturing to grow, if we want Make in India to succeed, then we need to be worried about these figures rather than celebrate them so early. That's the point I want to make, especially on this foreign investment issue, and that very important point of the foreign exchange, the dollar rate. Why is the dollar getting more and more expensive day by day? That really will have an impact on inflation very quickly. The crude oil prices have been going up. They seem to be going up and seem to be on that course. So it is going to hit us in very many ways.
All that with the prospect of a deficient monsoon is going to wreak havoc on the price situation. We'll discuss that in greater detail. But Dr. Mehta, coming to you now, would you like to quickly respond to what Dr. Khan mentioned about foreign investment not having picked up at all, despite a very different policy environment in the country now?
I'll slightly differ in this. In fact, FDI in last 1 year has grown tremendously in India. And also most of the investors, they are looking India as a bright spot that we have seen recently. And people are coming to India, and of course we have to see that once the land acquisition bill really gets cleared, the things will be very positive for India. And the way, if you see the infrastructure sector in India now, there's a tremendous growth coming over there once all these projects which are getting cleared. I think things will look positive. I'm not that negative on Indian economy right now.
And how do you view other indicators, Dr. Mehta? The consumer price inflation is slowly been edging up to 5.01% in May, although some would say it's still better than expected. And then, of course, we have the high IIP numbers, something which corroborates the government figures on indirect tax growth numbers.
You see, CPI is definitely just slightly has gone up, but we have to see that how the monsoon, really is going to take the shape. And once the government is prepared for the monsoon and they have a plan for dealing with the monsoon, and it will not be much of worry for us, in fact.
Okay, not much reason to worry. Dr. Agarwal, would you like to respond to it?
No, I think it is a matter of concern. But you see, we have always looked at WPI in this country. We have not looked at CPI. The American system of CPI and then having different indicators is good, and we can look at them and compare. But when we look at WPI, it's around 7% or so, roughly. It's about 150 basis points to about 250 basis points is the difference between the CPI and the WPI figures when we calibrate them. That is fairly a comfortable figure from the Indian economy as of today, because a lot of public expenditure is taking place through the PPP mode for the various projects which have been entered into. Like you might have seen with this new government coming in place, almost about $18 billion worth of investment to be invested in the next 4 years in the infrastructure sector, in the telecommunication sector, and things have come from different countries, including the World Bank and the US, China, Japan, and so on and so forth. And there are furthermore coming in. Now that is going to be collaborated with the public expenditure taking place. So that's going to naturally have an impounding impact on the inflation figures as well, and the money spending which goes on. So from that perspective, anywhere between 5 to about 7% would be comfortable. But as soon as we start crossing this figure in the WPI, that becomes a cause of concern. And with the bleak monsoon structure which has been observed so far, it is certainly a cause of concern as of today. What happens tomorrow would certainly be yet to be seen. For me, as a financial expert, I feel the exchange rate is a very important cause of concern. There is no indicator which should indicate the rupee to fall. I think the RBI needs to put its act together and see as to why is the rupee falling. There has been always an inflow and outflow of FIIs and FDIs. Net FDI inflow has increased as compared to the last 2 years in particular. But yes, there has been a flow in and out, and that takes place because of their local conditions in their own countries also. Not to forget that the debt crisis in US and in Europe is still not over. They have not been able to, the banks there have not been able to put their acts together. Countries are still suffering from, in Europe and other parts of the world in the West, suffering from fiscal problems and monetary problems. So given that, there would become companies who would like to withdraw their investments overseas, because these investments are kept for their future growth. They would need them whenever they need them. They would have their money back in their country. So that kind of withdrawal has taken place to some extent, but there have been repatriations of other forms which have come into the country, including NRI deposits and others which have come in. So there has been some replacement factor. But still, why is the rupee falling is a matter of concern. When we see IPP figures going up, when we see the World Bank saying 7.5%, we see international agencies talking about it, we see a positive outlook. When all this is so positive, what is the cause for the rupee to depreciate? And I think
we will take that point further, depreciation of the rupee in just a bit. We have to slip into a break here. Stay with us. We'll be right back. As economic growth outlook. And right now in the program, we are joined by Ashok Dasgupta, Senior Business Journalist. Welcome to the program, Mr. Dasgupta. We've been discussing the latest IIP numbers that were released on Friday, 4.1% for the month of April. What do you make of these numbers? Much higher than what many experts had predicted, and of course much higher than the numbers for March. You think the signs of green shoots of recovery are visible now?
I wouldn't say green shoots of recovery immediately, because this is just 1 month's IIP figure. The good point is that things have suddenly turned, the numbers at least, have suddenly turned for the better, which has surprised, as you said, economists, analysts, stock market people. They're surprised because nothing seems to be visible on the ground as yet.
Right.
Okay. The 4.1% figure shows good growth in the manufacturing sector. Now that again is a very good sign.
Right.
In the manufacturing sector, it is in the capital goods sector. Now, which is a better sign in the sense which means that corporates, companies are buying capital goods for expansion or whatever capacities they want to set up. Which means that possibly we are seeing the start of the recovery process. So I would say probably there is a tiny ray of sunshine at the end of the tunnel, but we haven't reached the end of the tunnel as yet. Now, We had unseasonal rains. It was apprehended that prices would rise. They did rise, food and vegetables, etc. Mainly pulses have really gone up. But inflation figures show that they haven't gone up to the extent that they were being feared.
Okay.
But right now we have another, gamble, so to say, the monsoon.
Right.
Already the Met officials have said that it will be a deficient monsoon to the extent of some 83% or 88% of the long-term, long period average, which means that the monsoons will be deficient. Not only that, it may be scattered, it may not be in time.
Right.
Already there are reports that the Kharif sowing has been affected because there haven't been any rains in those particular areas. So we are still in the midst of various challenges and problems.
Right.
Provided the monsoons are 88% of the long period average and not less, and the rainfall is, let's say, a bit delayed, I think things will be made up. In any case, we have huge food stock, but here food stock we mean only the cereal stock. Now cereal is only wheat and rice.
Right.
Prices that are going up are pulses, edible oils, and these are the two that have been impacted in the unseasonal rains.
Absolutely.
So we have to get over the hump as yet. But as of now, the figures show that things, if other things remaining normal, we would be on the road to recovery. That's all I can say right now.
Okay, and what would be those other things?
You see, one, where does the crude price go? Right now it is hovering between 64, 65. Now if it starts inching up, then a bit of a problem would start. Then our exports, depending on global recovery, if it really takes place, Greece is again a major problem, which is why the US stock markets collapsed. If Greece has to move out, there will be repercussions which will be felt worldwide. Greece is a tiny speck. But because there are other bigger countries involved, they have their money in Greece, those countries will get affected, so it will be a chain sort of a reaction. So all these things count. If the stock market doesn't do too well, it's now going through a major correction, then the disinvestment process that the government is supposed to start gets delayed, because you cannot disinvest in a collapsing market. So all these things are ifs and buts.
Right. Okay. Dr. Mehta, coming to you now, how do you look at these many ifs and buts mentioned here by Ashok Das Gupta? The situation in the global economy, for instance, global crude prices have helped the government keep inflation and the price situation under control. But what happens in the days to come is anybody's guess.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Mehta, can you hear me?
Hello.
Well, it
Hello.
seems we've lost our audio to Dr. Mehta. We'll go back to him in just a bit. Dr. Agarwal, I'm sorry, Dr. Amirullah Khan, would you like to come in?
Yeah, a couple of things that I would like to add. If I was looking at this issue from the corporate sector point of view, there are a couple of things I would be very worried about. The first thing I'm very worried about is the complete lack of rural demand. It has been flat.
Right.
And this is before the monsoon and the monsoon problem is hit. It's been flat. Real wages have been actually going down, and down in states like Gujarat and Maharashtra. So which means that rural demand is on its way down, which means that any recovery that I might be thinking of, any improvement in my investment is going to be risky. Already I am very worried because corporate earnings have been going down. That's one major reason why foreign investment foreign institutional investment has gone negative. So therefore, as far as the corporate sector is concerned, there is tremendous worry. On one hand, flat demand or a decreasing demand from rural India.
Right.
On the other hand, very, very low capital earnings, in fact disappointing in just about every sector.
Right.
And thirdly, what is very clear now is that the specter of inflation is back, and therefore the Reserve Bank is going to be tough.
Right.
which means that the leeway that I was looking for in terms of falling interest rates is not going to happen. Therefore, it is a situation which is pretty serious.
Okay.
It is not, it's not hunky-dory at all. I mean, I can say that, and manufacturing seems to have picked up for a month, but every other issue that I look at we are in trouble. And the bigger thing, and the one major issue that I want to highlight here is that, given the fact that foreign investment is lukewarm, given the fact that corporate sector in India is not investing, the only thing I then look for is public investment.
Right.
And public investment is wishy-washy.
Okay.
Where is public investment happening? It might happen. There is talk about 8 lakh crore rupees of investment in railways, but where is it going to happen, and where are we seeing it happening? We are not.
Okay.
That is why I am increasingly getting worried about these figures.
Okay, Dr. Mehta, come in on that. Private investment not picking up at all, and with demand not picking up, there's no way spending is going to pick up. So perhaps public investment is the only way forward. But what kind of public investment are we looking at?
Hello?
Yes, Dr. Mehta, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, please go on, Dr. Mehta.
Hello?
Well, it seems he can't hear us. Would you like to comment on that, Dr. Agarwal?
You see, I agree with what Dr. Khan and Mr. Das has said, but it is important to be looked at is the fact that, when you look at the growth coming into the country, there is an importance factor of the confidence level which is there. Fortunately, with this government and with the way things have been moving in the last 1.5 year now, there is a lot of positivity. There is a positive movement. But it is not supported by the financial industry so far. That is the thing which is becoming a cause of concern, of worry for both the Ministry of Finance and the industry as well. And the reason is that the credit offtake is not taking place because the industry does not want to take it forward. But it is more because the banks are shying away from giving this investment, whether it is to the industry or whether it is to the common man. And one of the major reasons for this is that they have also accumulated large amount of NPAs, some from international markets and some from domestic markets, because of their overexposure to the real estate sector. Because they are opaque institutions and they have been able to do well as compared to the international banking community, they have been able to hide this off for the last couple of years now. And the appreciation the Indian banking environment was getting because of being conservative, all that has shoved it off and hid it off. But the banking industry and the Reserve Bank of India knows it very clearly that they have accumulated and they're sitting on this hot NPA seat which is there, and just to cover up and keep their balance sheets clean, with the Reserve Bank even easing some norms, they are not getting the money let go out in the market, so that the balance sheets look nice. Now this is a big problem. When a patient is ready to move forward, get out of the bed and run, but there are these crutches which are holding you back and not helping you to finance and move forward. This would be a biggest impediment. And recently the finance minister at various occasions have intervened and come out and spoken to the press and said that the banks and even the RBI governor has come out and said that if we are easing, the banks must ease it to pass it on to the people who are taking loans, and this is not taking place. I think this is something which is very critical. If the economic wheel, the financial wheel in the industry is to move forward, we must see this banking approach coming forward, the banks coming forward to take up these projects and putting them on roll. The industry is there. There is a political will which is not there. There are things which are taking place, slow, steady, but taking place. Yes, I agree with Mr. Dr. Khan on one phrase that there is no clear path also which has been put by the current government, and I think they need to focus on creating a path for the next 3, 4, 5 years in different industries, so that different industry segments and even the common man is aware of what is happening and what can they invest in, where can they keep their savings in, and so on and so forth. That clarity is not there. But ultimately it comes to the financial support, which is completely an outrage structure as of today, which is creating a havoc for both the industry and even the government, which where they're not allowing them to go forward and move forward into the markets and create that growth impediment which the markets, the international community and even Indians are wanting.
Okay, Dr. Mehta, would you like to come in on that? The question of banks not being, not passing on the benefits of a rate cut by the RBI to the consumers. Well, it seems we are not able to connect to Dr. Mehta. Mr. Das Gupta, would you like to come in here?
Yes, sure. You see, the problem of bank NPAs is not new. NPAs have been there. But because of the slowdown, it has aggravated all the more. Okay? Now, the RBI till now has announced 3 rate cuts, 25 basis point each, which means 75 basis points. But some of the banks, and not all, have passed on to the consumer just about 30 basis points. Now, why is that? The finance minister held a meeting recently, I think that was yesterday,
Yes.
and banks explained their position. Some said they would do so, but after the monsoon, which means that they look at where the inflation is and accordingly, obviously it works, because whoever is a depositor will look at inflation plus something more that it can earn.
Right.
So that makes sense. Some have said that they are so overloaded with NPAs and at the same time they have high cost deposits, high cost in the relative context, because there are deposits which are at, let's say, 9%, 9.25% for senior citizens. In such a situation where 70% of their money is from deposits, how can you on-lend at a lower rate? So that's a very genuine problem. Now, why are the NPAs high? Again, there are 3 categories there. One is sectors and businesses which are genuinely affected by the slowdown. I mean, if you look at the real estate sector, their apartments are not selling at all because they have concentrated on luxury apartments which people used to buy not for staying but for investment purposes to make some money. Now those are not being sold. Affordable houses, the real developers do not go into. There are people, but they are still waiting for easing of interest rates further. And since the government has said the interest rates need to be passed on, the transmission has to be there, possibly they are waiting for it. Same goes for the consumer loans, auto loans. So it's a chain effect. The other category are people who, if they are goaded a bit, would end up paying, but they are just waiting for the goading, because it's best that you take the money and not pay. And there's a third category who are willful defaulters. They decided right from day one they will not pay up. Now, there was in one of these channels interview with the HDFC Bank MD, chairman. He said there are 15 to 20 big corporate houses who are just not paying up. And which is why the RBI has now come, I mean, I wonder why the RBI didn't come out with it earlier, that the debt would be converted to equity if you do not pay up. Now this is a real threat to the promoters, because if the company doesn't do well, I've said this time and again, the lifestyle of the promoter doesn't change, which means he makes his money, it is the shareholders who lose. So here, when he finds that his controlling stake would go, I think he'll sit up and pay.
Okay.
So these things, when they're eased out, obviously it will be better. Now coming to investments, private sector is waiting for the public sector to chip in, the government to chip in.
Right.
Because private sector in any economy doesn't invest first. It is the public investment that has to come in and make the wheels of infrastructure move.
Right.
Road projects, port projects, airports, what China had been doing. They are in a different category because they are facing a bubble there now.
Right.
They have invested too much capacities. So that has to come in. Now, it would be wrong to say that the government has not started spending. I think from April onwards, it has started a bit of spending, but much more is needed. Corporates, the capital goods sector increase, manufacturing, etc. shows that the corporates are also started, in investing in additional capacities, etc. Now, a problem there is the consumer demand is not there.
Right.
Now, if your company facility is working at, let's say, 70% capacity, you have 30% excess already. You wait for demand to pick up, you go to nearly 98% capacity, and then when you feel there's still demand, you go in for additional capacity. Although you need to plan for it in a long term.
Yeah.
But right now the situation is such, companies do not know how much the demand would be.
All right.
But consumer durables demand shows that, because of the summer heat, fridges have started selling, ACs have started selling. So there is a sectoral consumer demand that is taking place.
All right.
Now much again, as I said, would depend on what how the monsoon behaves.
How the monsoons behave is something we'll come to in the next segment. We have to take a break right now. Stay with us, we'll be back. Welcome back to Public Forum. We are talking about India's economic growth outlook. Dr. Khan, I'll continue with you now. The big worry regarding the monsoon, it seems we are staring at another drought year, another consecutive drought year. How serious do you think is the situation when it comes to, its impact on the prices? Because this is something even the RBI has said that any further rate cuts are going to depend on the impact of the monsoon on the food prices.
It's a no-brainer. It's very clear that in a country like India, where we are talking about rural demand that spurs commercial demand, that spurs consumer demand, and where we are talking about food prices, this is going to have an immediate and a definite impact.
Right.
Everybody said it. The worry is that are we prepared? And even if monsoons later turn out to be better than what we suggest they are, even then we need to be far better prepared than we are right now. For example, the simple case of lentils, of dal, there is still no policy. We know that dal prices are going up. We know they will go up even more. But there is nothing that we have seen so far which is been a step that has been taken to mitigate this rise in prices. And dal prices create havoc in a country that has very high protein deficiency. Dal prices going up is sure sign of failure. And that is the trouble. In this entire debate, the issue that we are constantly bringing up is that there seems to be very little firmness in long-term policy making and decision making. Surely there are minor incremental things that have been done to make things look better than they were, but where is the big change? For example, in agriculture, we would have expected that a new government, new policy, big government would come and change everything that we've been talking about for the last 10 years in terms of, APMC Act, supply chains, irrigation. We see no movement on agriculture, none at all. We see a lot of conversation on manufacturing, but we have seen nothing on agriculture. And that is a serious issue. And with monsoons now coming back, and this is the second year, so we have no excuse saying that we weren't ready or we weren't prepared and we are in the first year of governance. This is the second year. It's an important year, and it is going to impact every other sector that we are talking about.
Absolutely.
So that's my worry. That we know that 9% of sowing area is lesser this year. We know that the rains this year are going to be far more deficient, and they are coming on top of unseasonal rain.
Right.
So it's a double whammy. In that, I think we need far more firmer steps coming out of the Agriculture Ministry. We don't hear anything from that ministry.
Okay, Dr. Agarwal, talking about our preparedness to be able to mitigate the impact of a deficient and a delayed monsoon, many are talking about. The whole agricultural belt is going to be the worst hit. Some are saying northern states are going to receive even fewer than 85% rainfall. Government says the stocks are sufficient to contain, any kind of price shocks. That some preemptive measures have also been taken by the government. But how prepared are we to tackle the situation?
You see, as Dr. Khan also mentioned, we don't see any reporting or any concrete steps which have been outlined by the government or the Ministry of Agriculture coming forth in terms of the steps to be taken in case there are low monsoons. I believe the way things have been going on in the last year or so, there has been good outcomes with pessimism to come forth in the initial stage. If this is the same state, I think we may see something good. A very important component to be looked upon is, despite the agricultural revolution which took place quite some time back now, being there, Indian agriculture is still self-dependent on their own personal incomes. When I said 70 to 75% based on agriculture, the population on agriculture and agro-based industry, it is only the agro-based industry which actually picks up finances from the banks and financial institutions or local money lenders to actually go about doing business. The balance, about 65 to 70% of the population which is engaged in agriculture, actually bases its own agriculture on its own savings and family incomes. As you know, the most large number of the Hindu undivided family structure is there, which actually does, or in other religions they have family structures coming in which pool in the money to create. Now, given that, whether the RBI cuts or does not cut does not make a major impact on them. Okay. Secondly, given the sluggishness in the industry and even exports which have taken place, the Europe and the US, which Mr. Dasgupta talked about situation, there is not going to be an extensive export of agriculture goods and commodities which is expected. As a result, the large number of agro-based industries are balancing those out with the domestic demand. So we may not see that kind of a shock which the government says could be observed because of a low monsoon. It is a matter of concern because there is a huge consumption. We are looking at that consumption. Those consumption levels in the last 2 years in particular have already gone down to 50% levels in most families. And the reason has been that there has been a scare for the last 2.5 years with the previous government in place that we may not have our jobs tomorrow. We have over-invested in various real estate segments. Most families have done that. There is an excess burden of interest rate from banks coming in. So they have reduced their consumption of food. And as a result, that helps those government figures come out and match and say, yes, the needs would be met. But as I said, it is not a matter of cause of concern or worry because most agriculturists are producing out of their incomes. The major cause of worry is that and it has been dealt many times, discussed even at Lok Sabha channel many times, that there are large number of intermediaries which actually eat away the profitability or the earnings of the farmer.
Right.
And that particular issue has, despite the government knowing it, despite being debated for over years, has not been handled. A product which may cost 10 rupees comes to the market and becomes 70 or 80 or 100 rupees. The balance money actually is eaten away by the middlemen or the brokers. And I think these are some things which the government, despite creating online exchanges like the National Commodities Exchange and so on and so forth, has not been able to contain. And I think the government needs to take care of that if it wants its farmers to keep producing and having the same population base which is there and being the growth churners for India tomorrow and not moving away or shying away like it happened in Europe or in the US in the 50s, 60s and 70s, where a large number of farming community moved off, and most Europe and the West is only about 2 to 3%. Certain countries about 5% of population engaged in agriculture, primarily because of this factor that they did not see those benefits. They say, oh, the middleman makes the money. Let me become a middleman. Let me become the mukhya who goes and sells these products from these farmers to the market because that's where I earn more money. Now, that needs to be tackled, in my opinion, more seriously than even in the other problems per se.
Okay, Mr. Dasgupta, come in on the issue of the farm sector distress, the rural distress that we are witnessing, which is very, very real, and coupled with the problem of the monsoon, which could affect agricultural growth, which will impact prices, which could further affect overall economic growth.
Absolutely. You see, he talked about lentils. Now I recollect that I think just after the unseasonal rains, there was an insight program on that topic itself, where we discussed and we said that prices of pulses and edible oils are certain to go up. One, because of the shortage. Second, pulses we also import, edible oils we majorly import. So imports should be kept ready so that the prices do not rise. And imports should be contracted before the prices start rising. Now it's over 2 months. The Prime Minister the other day said we need to import pulses.
Right.
Which means it will take another 1.5 months of a month. By that time, prices have already risen. Right now in the market, pulses prices are 20 to 25 rupees per kilo more. Edible oils are 10 to 15 rupees a kilo more, a litre. So prices, what I am saying is that the data management and monitoring and taking action on that, it had been lax in the previous regime.
Okay.
You know, when we had the onion crisis and all other edible crisis, similar thing is happening now.
But
The
what about
other
the
day I
measures
just
that the
read-
government has taken so far? For instance, you know,
So far, what
extending
has taken, I'm
the
coming to that.
concessions on the import of
That's
pulses.
2 days back, or was it yesterday, I read a report in a newspaper that in Delhi, Delhi border, Alipur and all these places, in those godowns, they found 26,000 quintals of pulses, which was 4 to 6 times more than the stock limit of that particular person. Now that again is sure to happen, because when the middleman, the hoarder, the wholesaler finds that prices are rising, he will try to hold back stocks
Right.
to make prices rise all the more. Now, had imports taken place, he wouldn't have been able to hoard, because the prices would have remained at a more reasonable level. Now, coming to consumer demand, etc., for every family, average family, at least 45 to 50% of the total income goes to food.
Right.
Now, if you end up spending, because of the price rise, 70% on food, obviously you are left with 30% for other things, where consumer demand goes to the back burner. So, if prices rise, inflation rises, food prices rise, consumer demand will not take place
Right.
in, I think, 70% of the families in the country. Now, coming to the rural areas, if he is not able to sell because he has not been able to produce, first because of the unseasonal rains and now the deficient monsoon, there will not be any rural growth,
Okay.
which means consumer demand for certain sectors like motorcycles, scooters, tractors, FMCG goods will get hit.
Right.
They'll get impacted. So it is a chain reaction. So everybody, I think, should just look up and pray for the monsoons to be good. Because that holds the key. In our country,
Right.
a good monsoon holds the key to everything else
Prosperity.
falling into place.
Absolutely. Well, I'm completely out of time, but I'll take final comments from each one of you very quickly. Dr. Amirullah Khan, how do we deal with this better, and how do we turn this into an opportunity of sorts, as mentioned by the Prime Minister, the deficient monsoon prospect that we are faced with?
You know, Mandra, I think that the simple thing is that the economic growth angle is now hackneyed. There is really no reason to look at that anymore.
Okay.
I think the only thing we should look at is job growth.
Okay.
This government has come in promising jobs. It has to deliver there. The moment it delivers jobs, there will be rise in incomes.
Okay.
There will be rise
So
in
the
demand.
job growth
and
is the key.
therefore there will be
Dr.
economic.
Agarwal.
In my opinion, 3 things. One is the exchange rate must be brought under check. The RBI must be asked by the ministry to look into what is making the rupee fall down with all positive factors around, because that will help us contain inflation and due course. The second thing is that the agriculturists must get their dues, and the hoarders and the middlemen must be reduced, which have been a cause of concern for the prices rising in the market and creating a havoc even for the governments in the past.
Mr. Dasgupta, last word from you.
Well, we have a lot of short-term challenges, holding food prices, containing inflation. Now, he talked about, currency. That, I think, it's not up to the Reserve Bank to control.
All right.
Because the reserves that we have is not enough to really, monitor where our currency is.
All right. I'm afraid I have to leave it at that. We are completely out of time. I'd like to thank all my